right, welcome back to the second half of round one of this 2021 draft. We've got Dallas up next on the board. Sorry for making you wait, but Dallas, I think I've heard that they're thinking about a defensive end. So we'll see kind of who they end up with here and whether it'll help them recover and get their team back to where they were a couple seasons ago after a disappointing outing last year in which they went from Super Bowl champs to missing the playoffs. So difficult shift in Dallas, but I think a few pieces could really help them out. So let's see what they go with here at number 17. So they're going with Danny BRANDT, defensive end out of Notre Dame. So his endurance is going to be an issue. Speed and agility is a little bit under, but he's got decent size, 286 pounds. So bigger body, little bit slower guy, 80 strength. He'll already be able to platoon, but you're not going to want to put him in tons of snaps with the super low endurance. I'd say that endurance is a bit lower than I'd want to see it. But he does have good intangibles for training, which work ethic is big for training your players, competitiveness. That's going to help as well. So good opportunity that he'll train well. He's going to work hard in the locker room, but he does have some work to do, I think, before he'll be considered a starting caliber end. So for now, he's got a little bit of talent and a little bit of strength. He'll likely find a place on the roster, but he's going to need to do a little work to get where he needs to be. So anyway, decent pick, I'd say. Developable. I mean, he's got skills. They will develop. His strength will come up. That endurance should come up, but you'd want to get it up around 70, and that's going to be tricky. That's 12 points he's got to grow over the next few years. But he's only 22 years old, so you've got a good window till about 29 of development. So he's got a good, decent 7 years to develop some skills. But his rookie contract's only 5 seasons, so going to be a little bit short. But I'd say by year 3, you should have some training. That's what I'm noticing. I mean, I had a guy that reminds me a lot of this guy on my team that I drafted, and he in his 4th season, he's going to be our starting defensive end this year, but it took quite a bit of development for him. So but he was 20 years old, so he was a little younger. So he's only 24 now, which we've got rookies coming in almost 24 years old right now. So he came in at 20 years old. But anyway, not to get off the rails, let's get back to this draft and see what the Titans do at number 18. So Titans, and that's going to be an AI club. So Titans go with a wide receiver, Jack STILES. I would say Jack's speed's a little bit under. Love those hands. His endurance isn't great. So STILES is at Iowa, 22 years old, but he's got good size, 6'4", but he really needs to push that speed up. Slow endurance may not be too big of an issue for a position like wide receiver that isn't touching the ball. They're not really handling the ball a ton. They're not getting tons of reps, and it's not a super physical position. So you can get away with lower endurance at skill positions like wide receiver. But his speed, you're going to want to push that up above 80. But his strength at 19 is pretty bad. So overall, I'd say STILES might be a bit of a reach at wide receiver, and I do think there are some better wide receivers in the draft. So a little bit of a miss, I'd say, for STILES, but he very well could develop. He's got a decent personality, so he could be all right. I like his intelligence. So for a wide receiver, 66 intelligence is pretty great. He should be able to push that up above 70, which will really help him. He's going to work decently in the locker room. Maybe they could get a mentor on him and help develop him a little bit quicker. Maybe get some coach training on him as well. But yeah, he's going to need some work. He's not going to contribute right away for the Titans. So anyway, that's going to take us to the Bengals at number 19. Let's see who they go with. So Bengals going with, looks like Edgar Perry, strong safety out of Texas. Strength around 50, agility 77, tackling 75, speed 71. So definitely he's going to be too slow for strong safety, really, but this is a candidate you could consider moving to some kind of passing down linebacker position. He's got training at free safety. He does have 14 points of skill at linebacker. I would consider training him up there. He's got good endurance. Everything else looks more like a linebacker, so I'd put him maybe as like a pass defending, nickel. But still, you're going to want to see that speed push up a little bit, for that. But a good run clogger, yeah, maybe that actually would be his better role, a decent run clogger in kind of passing down situations. But I'd say this is a decent player. His agility is really good, and that'll develop and get over 80. His speed should grow a little bit, especially looking at his intangibles there. He's already got the endurance. So I would say this is a player I would be intrigued by. I'd definitely be picking him up off of the free agent line if he was available. But the tricky part is just finding a role for him because he's not really prototypical for any given position. A little bit too slow to be a strong safety, maybe still a little too slow for even linebacker, but he's got other skills that are going to really serve him well and mask a lot of those deficiencies and the fact that he doesn't really have a natural fit in terms of his skill set. His strength might be a little bit under, so a lot of times if they're lower strength, he can counterbalance that a bit with speed. So his strength's a little bit under, but that'll grow, and he's a player that should grow pretty well. 22 years old, so he's got a development window for sure. And I love those intangibles. I mean, his intangibles are great. That leads me to believe that he is going to develop well. So not a bad pick, I'd say, for the Bengals. Just need to figure out a place to find him playing time. So anyway, on to the Giants at number 20. See who they take. So Giants go with Anthony SEARS. So that's I need a mute button. So Anthony SEARS, who's the quarterback out of Utah, he decided to leave early after Utah lost the national championship to Florida State. He did have a great career at Utah. He played well. His speed is decent, but he wasn't like fully the ideal quarterback at Utah, and that pressure might be a big factor in why he left early. He wasn't the coaching staff at Utah kept mentioning how he wasn't the prototypical player for their offense, but he did run it well, and he did take Utah to a championship. And he does look like he could develop. He does have really good speed, but his hands are terrible. So to utilize his running speed and ability to run with the ball, you'd want him to have a lot better hands than 3. And that was a big factor we had with using him at Utah, was he kept fumbling the ball. He had a lot of fumbles in big situations. He would try to run too much, even if we were set our offense for the QB to not run at all. But he has natural instincts to do that. And so I think if he could, if his offense could be figured out and he could get into a system that serves him well, he could develop into a decent quarterback. So his arm and agility, or his arm and accuracy, is definitely below what I'd want to see it at, but he has good intelligence, and he did have that at Utah. His instincts were pretty good, and hence why he led Utah to a championship game and almost won it. So anyway, Anthony SEARS for the Giants. Decent pick, and that's going to take us to the Texans. Let's see. The Texans take, it's going to be Shelby Brownlee out of Florida State, and that's a good pick. Florida State, it was a championship team. They had a lot of talent coming into the pro league, so that's a decent pick. Like his strength. He's going to want to develop that pass blocking, but he's already a good run blocker, good pro-level run blocker. His endurance will need to come up, but he already knows how to play the position. His speed is decent enough. His agility might be a little bit under, but overall he's got developable skills, and he'll be a player that will get some playing time and will find himself in the rotation. So I'd say this is a decent pick for Houston. Lineman, always a safe pick for sure. And that's going to take us to the Texans again. So they got back-to-back picks via trades. So let's see what they do with their second pick of the first round. So we got another guard here, and that's going to be Wellman out of Texas Tech. And so this guy, so those two guards are kind of the inverse of each other. So you got a run blocking guard with the 21st pick. 22nd pick is more of a pass blocking guard. So you've already built yourself a platoon. The strength is great there at 84. The real big knock on Wellman is going to be his speed and agility. He's really slow, really doesn't have a lot of lateral movement. 291 pounds. He can afford to put some meat on those bones, in my opinion. But his endurance is already there in the pro range that you want to see, especially for a lineman, about 70. So he could develop, and I'm not sure, and I've not done a lot of testing on this, but I am curious if developing speed would be a little bit easier since he is so low. So I would probably stick this guy on hardcore athletic training to try and push those two things up, because I think if you even had these two numbers up about 30, he's already your starting guard. But we'll see how he develops and how Houston utilizes him, and if they're able to pull those two numbers up, because he really does have everything else that you want in a lineman. So that's going to take us on to the Jags with number 23. And Jags are back to an AI team, and they've been an interesting squad. Made the playoffs. They had Nesmith, their quarterback, almost in the MVP contention, even though he left this year. But they've always been an interesting team, even despite being one of the longer teams that have ran on AI. So let's see how they do here. They're going with Christian Pettis, free safety out of Navy. His speed and agility are decent. Strength is good for the position. He knows how to tackle well, and that's something I love to see from the safety position. His endurance is really good. He knows how to play the position, and he's got training at cornerback. So you've got a lot of opportunities for versatility with this player. You do want to see his speed get up around 85, but he's got pro-level skills. He should be a defensive back that develops well But he is somebody I would consider as well moving to corner and get some training there, especially because he's so high at free safety and he's already got a little bit of training. So I really love having players that have multiple skills. So I often in one of their seasons try to get them training in a secondary position so they can play two. And he'll be decent in nickel packages. So that's why I've wondered, and I don't know the answer of whether cornerback skill is factored when they're playing nickel, or if it's just any skill in any DB position, or if it stays on cornerback skill when playing in the nickel slot. So good pick, I'd say, for the Jags. That'll take us to the Bears, and we'll see what the Bears do at pick 24. I know I heard that he was wanting to replace Rizzo, who is their backup quarterback, but we'll see if they go with another spot here at 24. So that's going to be Parrish Cox out of Oklahoma State, a cornerback, and I would say decent player, 90 speed. He's already got elite speed. His agility's not too bad. His strength's a bit low for the position, but you could build that up, and he's already got pro-level speed. His lateral movement's going to need to improve. His endurance is going to need to improve as well. And he still needs some training at the position. But, 90 speed, going to be a quick player and should have a window to develop a few more ticks of speed as well. So Parrish Cox out of Oklahoma State headed to Chicago, and I think that's a decent pick. I mean, he'll be a player that can contribute right away. That'll take us to the Colts at 25, and that's going to be Jesse Shorter, linebacker out of Auburn. And so Auburn's been a decent program. They do send a decent number of players to the pro league. They're one of only 2 teams in the college league that have won 3 championships, albeit they've fallen off since then. Don't like his personality at all. He's a bit of a prima donna, but he is competitive, and that will serve him well on the field. So locker room, he might be a little bit of an issue, but on the field, he should be competitive, and he's got skills. That 80 speed is actually really good for a linebacker. His strength might be a little bit under, but with him already being at 80 speed, you could consider moving him to a safety position because he is at 80 speed. If you get that to 85, you have a guy that really you could train and play at free safety, strong safety, corner, and linebacker. He maybe is a little undersized at 225 for the linebacker position, but versatile player, versatile skill set that should serve him well, even if he has a bit of a prima donna, which I think will stunt his development. So that's going to take us on to the Eagles, who traded out of the number 1 pick down the board to get so Carolina could get to the top of the first round and take their quarterback, who they did in Daniel Kelso out of Virginia. So let's see what the Eagles do here. And that's going to be David Butler, defensive tackle out of Iowa. His strength's going to be under. I'd like him to have a little more size. I'm actually trying something a little bit different with Utah or with Washington this year, and we're going to have 2 defensive tackles at about 330 pounds. So his strength is a bit low. You'd want it to be higher to mask his size deficiency, in my opinion. 295 pounds. He'll match up against most interior O linemen, but he does need to push that strength up. He does have endurance, though, which I like. And, man, those intangibles are really good. Great team player, great leadership, great work ethic, great competitiveness. His attitude seems to be pretty good, so that'll give him an opportunity to develop, but he is going to need some work before he really is going to see much playing time, in my opinion. So defensive tackle for the Eagles but he is only 21 years old, so that's a development window that's decent. And that's going to take us back to the Raiders at 27, who, in my opinion, missed on their wide receiver earlier in the round. Let's see if they take another wide receiver and if they hit on the right one. I do know that there are some other wide receivers in the draft, so we'll see here what the Raiders go with, and that's going to be Ben Baker, who a lot of people had slated to go high in the first round. On some boards, I had him going top 5, number 1, best player in the draft, but he's dropped to later half of the first round, and I can kind of see why. His strength isn't, like the other defensive ends we've seen have been up near 80 strength. He's at 70. His speed's 72, but he's got kind of a, just a overall jack of all trades kind of skill set. Could serve him well. 262 pounds. He's a little bit undersized, so you want to see that strength come up or that speed come up to kind of help get around those bigger linemen. But he does have training at a few positions. You're not going to put him at defensive tackle at all. He's way too small for that. You could consider him at linebacker. He does have strength, agility. And actually, when I'm looking at him now and thinking about that, I would consider moving him to linebacker and ending up with a 262-pound linebacker that has, around 75 speed, 75 agility, 70 strength. That would be a decent player. And I think in the pro situation, that's probably where he's going to end up. But he's got a lot of versatility in a lot of spots. So I do kind of see why he was rated so highly in the draft, because he does have a versatile skill set, and you really could focus the training and develop him at the spot you want to. But I would really be intrigued to see how he would do playing linebacker, and he already has 22 skill there. So interesting to see how the Raiders handle him and what they do with him. But I'd say that's a decent pick this low down the board. So that's going to take us on to the Lions. At 28, and the Lions are going with Hugh Church, linebacker out of Charlotte. So small school, Charlotte. But he's kind of got some of those Ben Baker thing going on again as well, but he doesn't have any training at defensive end, and he is a natural linebacker. 21 years old, 248 pounds, though, so that's good size for the linebacker position. Similar skill set to Ben Baker. Church is decent. I like his size. I think he'll develop well. He'll want to pick up that strength and endurance, though, in order to really maximize his potential on the field. So, decent pick, I'd say, at 28. Hugh Church out of Charlotte for the Detroit Lions. And that's going to take us to the Rams, who recently just had blink leave after a great playoff run, but their GM got a little too busy with regular life, and so had to give up the team. And so they'll be running on AI this year, which honestly becomes an opportunity for other teams in the NFC West to find themselves in first place. And they're going with HARLAN Singer out of Utah. So this guy was a stud, man. This was one of my favorite players I've ever had at Utah. He developed well, had almost perfect intangibles. He got up to like a 98 overall at the strong safety position in college, which is rare. So he was the highest rated DB in the college game, played well. He was our anchor on defense. He's one of my favorite players, as I said. to come through the Utah program. He was such a solid player, was versatile. I considered moving him to corner. I considered moving him to free safety just to get him some training there, but I ended up not doing that because I had a strong safety leave early, and he needed to anchor down that position. So he's got the speed and agility already. A little bit, he's 209 pounds, so you really couldn't shift him up to linebacker, but he's going to be solid for you. 81 tackling. He's a great tackler at the safety position, and he's got decent speed. So, and his endurance is already great. He's got the intangibles to really affect the locker room. So I'd say this is a good pick for the Rams this late in the round down at 29. So that's going to take us to the Green Bay Packers at number 30. And we will see what the Packers do here. So the Packers go with cornerback Stephen Burris out of Ohio State. Decent speed and agility. His tackling might need to come up a little bit, but he's got decent endurance, knows how to play the position. Size is decent, 6'2", 194. So he should be able to cover those wide receivers pretty well. Maybe stick him on some tight ends, but not quite strong enough to play, that nickel slot that might end up getting those coverage assignments on tight ends. So decent pickup, I'd say, at 29, cornerback Stephen Burris out of Ohio State. So that's going to take us to the Bills at 31. And the Bills take Stephen Wilcox. So he was another safety out of Utah. But he was a little slower than Harlan Singer. Didn't quite have the skill set, so he became more of a platoon guy. He played some spots at linebacker, even though he doesn't have the training there. We did shift him down in passing situations. We had him in the nickel slot. We utilized him in some different ways, and he's got a decent skill set. So 217 pounds, that's enough weight that you could consider shifting him down to linebacker. I think he's got a skill set built better for linebacker in the pro league just because his speed shaved off a little bit. He was a bit slower than Harlan Singer was in college. And so I think that this is a decent pick. He went a little higher than I expected he was going to. He's a little bit older at 23 years old, so his development window is a little bit shorter. But I do think he could be a decent linebacker in this league. So Steve Wilcox, and that's back-to-back Utah players, or well, not back-to-back, so 2 Utah players out of the secondary taken as we close out this first round. And that's going to take us to the Panthers, which I need to look at the list here, because he can't get very good connection, and at least enough to not get errors when he's exporting to try and pick up a player. So we'll look for the high players on his list. Hopefully that didn't show. Yeah, okay, so that's higher up. So didn't quite see his list, but I need to look at it here. So that's going to be Bales. Let's go to his war room. And I think we're going with Carl Bales. Let's see. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm trying to... So that's the top guy on his list. So that's who he's taking is Carl BLAIS. So that's going to take us back to the back to the draft room to look at his player card after he's been drafted, and then we'll wind this sucker up. So Carl BLAIS out of Fresno State, smaller school. His strength's a little bit under. His endurance will need to come up a little bit, but he's in development window. He should be able to get that up above 70, up near 75 for sure. So decent player, I'd say, but his strength's a little bit low. His size is decent, 305 pounds. So
He's a little bit smaller than some of the top linemen. I've been seeing guys at 330 pounds, and he doesn't quite have the strength right now to make up for that. So definitely a project and a little bit of development that's going to need to take place for Carolina and BLAIS at the tackle position. But overall, not a bad pick, developable. Just doesn't quite have the skill set necessary to be a starting caliber player right now. So we'll see how Carolina manages him and how everything goes as they step into the second year of developing that squad. So anyway, that concludes round 1. We'll be picking up round 2 again on Tuesday, so I do like to give a little gap in between rounds. So we'll go Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'll do the same thing that we did here. Tuesday, we'll do the first 16 picks, and then we'll go 17 to 32 on Wednesday. So I'll announce all that in the Discord. We'll pick it all up, but thanks for tuning in, and look forward to catching up to some of the chat in the Discord, and hopefully everyone enjoys their players, and we'll get that file uploaded